Lieutenant Cthulhu Nar stood at the edge of the ridge, arms crossed behind his back, watching the chase unfold below with the calm superiority only a Vraxan highborn could master. He flicked his mandibles, amused. The human was wounded, again, and still moving, a little slower now, dragging one leg behind her like a broken tail, but moving nonetheless. Fascinating, in the way a malfunctioning robot is fascinating right before it explodes. "She's resilient," murmured Sub-Officer Vex, his three eyes narrowing through the tracking scope. For something so organic, Cthulhu didn't bother responding. Of course she was resilient. That was the point of the exercise. If the prey didn't flail, scream, and limp valiantly toward some meaningless hope, where was the satisfaction in the hunt? He activated the recording drone. These final moments would make an excellent training holo, proof that even the most erratic species could be outclassed by discipline, precision, and superior plasma fire. On the ground, Sergeant Teresa Tex Ramirez grunted, a sharp pain blooming in her side every time she breathed. Plasma burns always hurt worse than bullets. Something about the way it cooked the nerves before it shut them down. She'd been shot before, but this one was deep. She tapped the comm at her collar, static. Crackling in her ear. "Still jammed," she muttered, coughing. Blood touched her lips. "Cool. Real professional, Tess." Her boot caught a root and she stumbled, barely catching herself on the twisted bark of an alien tree. Everything around her shimmered with colors not meant for human eyes. Purples that buzzed like insects. Leaves that breathed. The whole damn planet felt like a hallucination induced by bad shrimp tacos and PTSD, which frankly was her general experience with the galaxy. She glanced at her wristpad. No signal. No evac. Just the countdown clock blinking red. 9 minutes. Give or take. She chuckled and winced. I told him not to park that close to the storm belt. Behind her, a plasma bolt sizzled past, scorching the tree beside her head. She ducked instinctively, dropping to one knee. Another bolt tore through the air where her torso had been. They were closing in now. Playing with her. Cthulhu adjusted his scope, mildly disappointed. They always panic at the end. Tex rolled under a fallen trunk, biting back a scream as her burned side scraped bark. She lay there a moment, breathing through her teeth, eyes darting. The rustle of footsteps wasn't far. She had a single sidearm left. Broken, of course. The aliens had EMP'd her gear on contact. This whole mission had been a disaster from minute one. Recon, they'd said. Just a simple recon. Drop in, scan, drop out. Then the net had dropped. A Vraxan hunter net, strong enough to hold a rhino. They'd tagged her for sport. Earth had been marked Tier 4, pre-industrial in their laughably outdated classification system. Probably still thought humans used combustion engines and duct tape to fix satellites. In fairness, they weren't entirely wrong. "Tex, come on," she whispered to herself, blinking sweat and blood from her eyes. "This ain't your first rodeo." She reached into the small pouch on her belt and pulled out a tiny silver capsule. Flipping it open, she stared at the cracked display inside. Still ticking. Still tracking. She tapped it once, then pressed it to her lips and whispered, "Tell Reaper I still owe him that beer." She crushed it under her glove. A plasma round hit the trunk above her, sending splinters of alien wood raining down. She rolled away, hissing, and sprinted, limped, through the underbrush. The forest blurred, her vision double. Voices echoed. Behind her, alien tongues mocking her with every step. Cthulhu's voice came through her translator, tinny and smug. "Earth female. You have provided a mildly entertaining pursuit. Your vitality is noted in the record. Surrender now, and your termination will be merciful." Tex laughed, loud and hoarse. "I've seen bad Yelp reviews with more sincerity." The hunters didn't understand the reference, which made it funnier. She collapsed behind a moss-covered rock, breathing in shallow gasps. She reached into her boot and pulled out a combat knife. Useless against plasma, but she wasn't planning to die quietly. The wind shifted. She smelled something faint. Not the burning ozone of plasma, not the weird spicy sweetness of Vraxan air. Jet fuel. Her head snapped up. Couldn't be. Above her the sky shimmered. One of the hunters raised a hand, squinting, at a flicker in the clouds. A falling star, maybe. Except stars don't trail fire like that. Don't scream across the atmosphere like a banshee with a vendetta. Cthulhu narrowed his eyes. "Sir," Vex said, pointing. "There's something—" "I see it?" Cthulhu snapped. The fireball plummeted toward the forest, growing in size, screaming louder now. A meteor? An escape pod? No. Too controlled. It wasn't falling. It was piloting. Tex's lips twisted into a bloody grin. "Took you long enough, you magnificent bastard." The object slammed into the ground a mile away, sending a shockwave that rattled teeth. Trees toppled. Aliens stumbled. Silence followed. The forest held its breath. Cthulhu's mandibles twitched. "What was that?" Vex tapped his scanner, frowning. "Massive heat signature. No ID in our databanks. Single. Occupant vessel. Earth origin, but not military registry. Civilian model. Ancient even. Refitted. Explain." It's playing music, sir." Cthulhu blinked. Music? From somewhere far off, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of a distorted guitar riff. Then drums. Then a voice. Highway 2. "The danger zone." Cthulhu tilted his head. "Is this a war cry?" A new signal lit up the tracking board. Moving fast. Too fast. Straight toward them. Tex struggled to her feet, chuckling through blood. "Told you Reaper's taste in entrance music was loud." One of the younger hunters, Zarl, whispered nervously, "We should fall back, just until we assess." "He's one man," Cthulhu snapped. "One primitive human. We are hunters of the outer belt. What threat can a single Terran pose?" Tex coughed. "You're about to find out." Cthulhu turned toward the sound. The underbrush parted. The air grew heavy. Even the trees seemed to lean away. And then, like something out of a very old, very grainy Earth action film, a silhouette emerged through the smoke and sparks. Trench coat. Aviator glasses. A shotgun slung across his back, bandolier strapped across his chest. Boots that had definitely walked through hell. He stopped, cracked his neck, and lit a cigar. Tex rolled her eyes. Always with the entrance. Reaper didn't look at her. Not yet. He just took in the group of confused aliens, blew a smoke ring, and said in a gravel-thick voice, "So which one of you teabagged my friend?" No one answered. "Good," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Means I can take all the credit for what happens next." Cthulhu raised his weapon. "Terminate the intruder." But the first shot didn't come from a plasma rifle. It came from Reaper's hip. One of the hunters fell backward with a smoking hole through the middle of his forehead, eyes wide, expression forever frozen in disbelief. Silence. Then Reaper winked. Tex, leaning against the rock, shook her head. "I leave you alone for 5 minutes, and you go full Schwarzenegger." "Please," Reaper said, ejecting the shell. "Schwarzenegger wishes he was me." Cthulhu stepped back. "You're supposed to be dead. Listed as unaccounted. Earth reported no recovery." Reaper's smirk didn't touch his eyes. "Yeah, well, Earth also thinks Pluto's a planet again. We all make mistakes." Another shot. Another alien down. Tex leaned back, the pain in her side burning hotter, but her smile widened. Her hand found her knife again, this time with purpose. Reaper was here. She wasn't alone, and someone was going to pay. The alien hunters regrouped, confusion giving way to cold efficiency. They began to spread out, encircling. Reaper let them. Above them, the music still played, louder now. Right into the danger zone, Cthulhu snarled. You think you can intimidate us with spectacle? No, Reaper said calmly, leveling his shotgun. I'm just buying time. For what? For the punchline. The sky cracked, above. Them. The clouds tore open as if in laughter, and the Old Testament, Reaper's battered, duct-taped-together spacecraft, hovered in with guns drawn, blinking aggressively like it had something to prove. Reaper took a drag from his cigar, exhaled, and muttered, "Knock, knock." Tex grinned. "Who's there?" "Boom," Reaper replied, and then the forest exploded. The blast flattened the clearing, shredding trees like paper, and sending a shockwave through the dense alien forest that knocked birds from the canopy and sent smaller creatures scurrying. Smoke curled upward in a thick column, casting an unnatural twilight over the shattered terrain. In the center of it stood Reaper, framed by fire and ruin, eyes scanning for movement behind the reflective tint of his glasses. His coat flapped in the heat wave. The battlefield had changed, but the rules hadn't. Kill or be killed. Always. A low groan drew his attention. He turned to find Tex pinned beneath a fractured log, her leg caught awkwardly. She was pale, but still conscious, her hand stained red from pressing the wound in her side. Reaper crossed to her in seconds, tossed the log aside like it weighed nothing, and knelt beside her. "You're late," she rasped, blinking through sweat. "Also, dramatic much?" He didn't smile. "Couldn't let you steal all the glory," she grunted as he lifted her carefully. Her limbs trembled from blood loss, but she still managed to wrap one arm around his shoulder. "Told you not to fly through the storm belt." And miss the look on their faces? He adjusted her weight. Not a chance. Behind them, movement. Reaper turned, gun raised, but it was only debris settling. No enemy in sight. That was worrying. Vraxons didn't scatter. They regrouped. Tex caught his hesitation. "They're still out there." "Yeah," he said quietly. "And they're pissed." Reaper carried her toward the crash site. Now a smoldering trench cut clean through the forest. The Old Testament, scarred but intact, sat wedged between two smoking tree stumps. Its hull bore a dozen new burns, and one engine sparked fitfully, but it had made it. Barely. Inside the cockpit was bathed in red light. The AI, Gideon, spoke as they entered. Voice, clipped and British. "Sir, I must protest. Emergency re-entry through unscouted terrain is a violation of 7. Override complaints," Reaper said, laying Tex down on the padded bench. "Status report. Structural integrity compromised. Atmospheric processor offline. Defensive. Turrets down. Long-range comms shattered. But she flies." Tex winced as she shifted. "Barely." Reaper knelt, pulling open the medkit. "That's always been the charm." He cut through her armor with a heated scalpel, revealing the wound. Deep, searing edges. Infection already creeping along the margins. She clenched her jaw as he applied. The biofoam. Her fingers curled into the bench, muscles twitching. "You always were bad at dodging," he said softly. "And you always show up once I've done all the hard parts." He chuckled, a brief flicker of warmth between the chaos. Then his expression darkened. "They thought you were easy prey." "Yeah, they tagged me for sport," she hissed as he sealed the foam. "Their version of a safari." Reaper's jaw tightened. "Mistake they won't live to repeat." A warning light blinked on the console. Gideon spoke again. "Sir, we have incoming. Multiple heat signatures. 50 plus. Closing fast." Tex looked at him. "I thought you wiped them." "I took out the cocky ones. Now we get the professionals." Reaper stood, grabbing his weapons. "Stay put. I'll hold them off." She shook her head. "You won't last 10 minutes solo." "Don't need 10, just 5. He stopped. "If I fail, you won't." "Tex, You don't get to die until you buy me that beer." He hesitated, then nodded. Outside, the forest had gone quiet again. Too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the thick tension of a battlefield waiting to erupt. Reaper stepped out, into the clearing, the smoke clinging to him like a shadow. He didn't have to wait long. The Vraxans came in waves, disciplined, armor-clad, their weapons humming with lethal precision. They fanned out, encircling the ship, weapons trained on the man standing calmly before them. Reaper cocked his shotgun, then slung it over his shoulder and drew 2 pistols, each one older than most of the creatures aiming at him. Cthulhu emerged from the smoke, cloak singed but pride intact. He walked with the slow, deliberate pace of someone who had never lost a battle and did not expect to start now. "Earthman," he called. "You are surrounded." Reaper rolled his neck. "You're loud for someone standing on ash." Cthulhu didn't blink. "We offered her mercy. She refused. Now you come crashing through the sky, screaming like a fool, expecting what? Glory? Revenge?" "I came for my friend," Reaper said. "But I'll take your heads if that's all that's left," Cthulhu sneered. "You think bravery will change physics? Your bullets cannot penetrate our shields. Your tactics are outdated. You are obsolete." Reaper fired. Not at Cthulhu, but at the tree beside him. The old trunk exploded, and the shrapnel slammed into the nearest Vraxan soldier, bypassing the energy shield entirely. The alien crumpled, twitching. "I don't need to shoot through your shields," Reaper said, stepping forward. "I just need to be smarter than you." Cthulhu roared, signaling the attack. Reaper moved like a machine possessed. Bullets sang through the smoke. Every shot counted. He ducked behind trees, used the terrain, forced the Vraxans to shoot, at angles their rigid doctrine hadn't prepared for. He set off grenades timed with Gideon's heat mapping, buried mines in their predicted step patterns. The battlefield became a trap, one he had designed in 30 seconds, lived in for 30 years. Inside the ship, Tex monitored his vitals, eyes narrowing at the spikes. Pain, fatigue, blood loss, but no hesitation. "You're still out there, cowboy," she whispered. "Still dancing." A tremor shook the cockpit. Gideon's voice returned, edged with tension. "Ma'am, he cannot hold indefinitely." "No," she said, forcing herself upright. "But I can help him tip the scale." She reached under the bench and opened the hidden compartment. Inside lay a case. Simple, nondescript, but to her it was sacred. She pulled it out and keyed in the code. It hissed open. Reaper's old sniper rifle gleamed inside, custom silvered, engraved, one of a kind. He had retired it after the last war, claimed he didn't need it anymore. She had kept it cleaned, calibrated, hidden. "Bet you're glad I'm sentimental now, old man." She loaded the rifle with trembling fingers. The window slid open with a hiss. The scope calibrated instantly. Outside, the enemy converged on Reaper's position, overwhelming numbers collapsing from 3 sides. Her finger hovered. 3 breaths. 1 kill. The first round pierced the Vraxan commander's skull, scattering bone and flame. The second hit a plasma pack mid-charge. It detonated, taking 3 more. By the third shot, Cthulhu had realized what was happening. He screamed for his troops to scatter. It didn't help. Tex kept firing. Reaper didn't flinch. He knew the rhythm. Trusted her to find the gaps, cover. His reloads. He moved between each shot like a dance they'd choreographed in fire. Cthulhu's forces buckled. Their order collapsed. They retreated. Not in strategy, but in fear. Only Cthulhu remained. He staggered toward Reaper, claws trembling. "You are nothing. One man, one species. Your kind does not belong here." Reaper lowered his guns. "We didn't ask to belong. You brought this fight to us." Cthulhu raised a trembling blade. A single shot rang out. His body crumpled at Reaper's feet. Reaper didn't look back. "Thanks, Tex." Her voice crackled in his earpiece. "Told you I had the high ground." He holstered his weapons and walked through the wreckage. Around him the forest burned, alien cries fading into smoke. The war, this battle, was over. For now. Tex leaned back, blood still seeping through the foam, but her eyes never left him. "So, we get to go home?" Reaper stopped at the edge of the ship and looked skyward. The stars were starting to return, cutting through the ash. "No," he said quietly. "They'll come again, stronger, angrier. This was just the opening act." Tex closed her eyes. "Figures. But next time," he said, stepping into the ship. "We won't be alone." Gideon lit up. "Receiving encrypted pulse, human, off-world origin, coordinates triangulating." Tex raised an eyebrow. "Reinforcements?" Reaper's mouth twitched into something almost like a grin. "Not yet, but the galaxy just heard us scream." The message was short. Just a series of numbers pinging off long-forgotten satellites, bouncing across dead relays and scavenged frequencies. But it was enough. Somewhere out in the dark, someone heard. Somewhere, someone responded. Inside the Old Testament, Tex lay strapped to the medical cot as Gideon monitored her vitals. The foam had stopped the bleeding, but the infection was evolving faster than Earth-standard treatments could counter. Her skin flushed with fever. Her breath hitched every few minutes. She hadn't told Reaper the worst part. She didn't need to. He already knew. He sat in the gunner's chair, boot tapping the metal floor in time with a soft, rhythmic clink. Not nerves. Calculation. He scanned the planet's rotation, the orbital patterns, the spread of remaining Vraxan warbands. They were pulling back, regrouping, planning a return strike. Gideon's interface flickered. Signal intercepted. Civilian. Frequency. Human. Probable military origin. Low orbit. Tex opened her eyes. "Please don't tell me you called the suits." "I didn't," Reaper muttered, still scanning. "But I think they were already listening." A second ping hit. Then a third. Followed by coordinates. Reaper stood. "They're coming in low. Probably don't know what they're walking into." "Or maybe," Tex coughed. "They do." He grabbed his gear. "I'm going to meet them." "You sure they're friends?" "No," he said without looking back. "But I'm sure they're not Vraxan." The drop zone wasn't far. Reaper hiked through the wreckage of a forest, torn apart by gunfire and rage. Smoke still drifted through the trees. Alien bodies littered the path, already being consumed by the jungle's native predators. Nature, at least, was quick to move on. At the ridge he saw it. A sleek, retrofitted civilian transport, old Earth design, with ridiculous flame decals on the side, and the phrase "Boomerang Express" stenciled across the hull. The back ramp lowered. A tall, wide figure stepped out wearing mirrored sunglasses and a tank top that read, "Hug it out, or don't," in neon pink letters. Reaper blinked. "Jenkins?" The man grinned. "Reaper, my dude. Heard you got into a little alien mess. Figured you could use a lift and a war crime or two." Behind him, two more figures descended. One with a rocket launcher twice his size, the other chewing bubble gum like it was a contact sport. All were American. All were very clearly not military. But all were carrying enough firepower to restart a Cold War. Reaper raised an eyebrow. "What is this? A rescue mission or a frat reunion?" Jenkins tossed him a beer. "Little of both. Tex with you?" "Injured," Reaper said, catching the can without breaking stride. "She needs evac. Got med kits, field surgeons, and a cooler of Gatorade. Let's move." As they walked, Reaper filled them in. Vraxans using human worlds for sport, Tex being left as bait, and the sheer scale of firepower that had rolled through like a cosmic steamroller. Jenkins just nodded, chewing jerky like it was tactical. Data. They reached the Old Testament just as Tex sat up, gritting through a fever spike. Jenkins whistled. Damn, you look terrible. Tex gave him the finger. Still better than your taste in shirts. He chuckled and handed her a med injector. This'll sting like 1997 tequila. She winced. Then it's probably exactly what I need. As she stabilized, Reaper turned to Jenkins. This wasn't just a random pickup. Jenkins lost the smile. It wasn't. There's chatter out there. Something big's brewing. Vraxen? Worse. They're getting support. Black market tech, advanced AI targeting, prototype bioweapons. Stuff that makes Earth look like it's still flipping VHS tapes. Tex groaned. So we pissed off the JV team, and now the varsity squad wants a rematch. Something like that, Jenkins said. Word is, Earth's still considered off-limits by Galactic treaty. But since we're fringe humans out here, we're fair game. Reaper's voice dropped. They're testing our limits. They're testing how loud we scream when they cut deep. Silence lingered in the air. Gideon's voice chimed in from the ship. Apologies, sirs, but we have another problem. Tex muttered. Always does this right when I think we've hit rock bottom. Enemy ships entering atmosphere. No ID. Faster than Vraxen crafts. Heavily armored. Purpose unknown. Reaper's eyes narrowed. How long? 10 minutes. He turned to Jenkins. You bring anything heavier than bad jokes? Jenkins clapped his hands. You're in luck. We've got a retrofitted battle dog, 2 power suits, and a disassembled prototype railgun. Tex blinked. Why disassembled? Because I used the case to store beer, Jenkins admitted. But it'll be ready in 5. They went to work. Reaper checked and double-checked the weapons, while Tex helped calibrate the targeting systems. From the gunnery chair, the ship groaned with the strain of the modifications, but it held. The newcomers weren't Vraxen. They were something worse. Clean ships, minimal markings, moving with surgical intent. As they approached, Reaper could feel it. Mercenaries, hired guns with alien funding. The lead ship broadcast a message. Unknown human entities, cease aggression. You are now classified as rogue elements. Surrender, and your execution will be swift. Tex snorted. Diplomatic, aren't they? Reaper keyed the mic. This is Earth territory. You want to surrender? Bring snacks. Jenkins leaned toward the screen. Also, your ship designs suck. Just saying. The alien ships began descending faster. Tex looked at Reaper. You think we're walking out of this? No, he said, locking in the last coordinate. I think we're going to make sure they don't walk away either. The first volley struck the shields. Experimental ones Jenkins had scavenged from. A crashed cruiser. They held, barely. Reaper and Jenkins took to the field while the others operated from within the ship. Tex coordinated the orbital defense grid using Gideon's half-fried AI routines. They didn't fight pretty. They didn't fight clean. They fought like humans. Improvised explosives, duct-taped warheads, flashbangs made from stolen alien camera, drones. One mercenary squad tried to flank Reaper, only to find themselves knee-deep in a trench filled with leftover swamp gas and one very enthusiastic match. Tex picked off targets from the turret while Jenkins ran interference with the dog. An exosuit shaped like a pit bull and programmed with the personality of a retired trucker. Every time it knocked down a trooper, it muttered something about property taxes and gas prices. By the time the last ship exploded, the field was covered in smoking craters and bad decisions. Tex slumped in her seat. How many more of these before Earth actually notices? Reaper stood among the wreckage, smoke curling off his coat. They noticed. They're just watching. Jenkins walked up, bruised but grinning. So what now? We raise a little more hell? No, Reaper said. We go dark. We disappear. Tex frowned. That's not your style. I've been too loud, he said. They'll keep coming, stronger, smarter. We need allies, ghosts, people who don't play by galactic rules. Jenkins nodded slowly. You want the Reaper network back? Reaper looked at the stars. I want them to remember what happens when you push a human too far. Tex leaned her head back. Then I guess we're not done dying yet. No, he said, the echo of gunfire still ringing in his ears. We're just getting started. The stars outside were distant, indifferent. The ship hummed with the soft whine of its damaged engines, barely keeping them in orbit, and the rusted frame groaned under the weight of its hasty repairs. The Old Testament had taken far more hits than any civilian vessel should have, but it was still alive. And for now, that was enough. Inside, the crew sat in silence. Tex was sprawled on the couch, her leg propped up and wrapped in bandages, trying to ignore the searing pain in her ribs. She hadn't said a word since the last firefight. Jenkins, meanwhile, had taken to pacing, his hands in his pockets, eyes darting between the comm systems and the data screens. The quiet was oppressive. Even Reaper, usually so calm under pressure, seemed restless. You're thinking too much, Tex said suddenly, breaking the silence. Reaper glanced at her but didn't answer immediately. His mind was elsewhere, tracking the mercenary movements. They were getting closer. It was only a matter of time before the next attack came, and he had no illusions about it being a simple skirmish this time. The last fight had been a warning, not a victory. What are we going to do about them? Jenkins asked, his voice tight with frustration. We keep throwing punches, but they're only getting better. They're learning. I know, Reaper replied quietly, not taking his eyes off the screen. They're adapting, just like we are. But we've got something they don't. And that is? Tex raised an eyebrow. Something to lose, Reaper said, his voice low, almost like he was testing the words on his own tongue. There was a pause. Tex narrowed her eyes, catching the change in his tone. You're not talking about us. No, Reaper answered with a small shake of his head. I'm talking about Earth. Jenkins let out a short laugh. Earth? They've got more important things to worry about than us, like figuring out what's going on with those alien ships in their backyard. Maybe, Reaper said, but the more these mercenaries push, the more they'll force Earth's hand. And when they do, we'll be in the perfect position. What, to start a war? Tex's voice was laced with skepticism. A war? Reaper turned to her, his eyes gleaming with a cold clarity. No, a reckoning. Tex exhaled sharply, clearly weighing his words. You're serious, aren't you? He didn't answer her directly. Instead, he reached for the communications console, connecting the ship's weak signal to a broader network. The screen flickered before stabilizing. An encrypted channel. A line to someone who had been out of touch for years. It's time to bring them back, Reaper muttered under his breath. Jenkins walked over, leaning over Reaper's shoulder. Who are you calling? Someone who doesn't care about the rules, Reaper said, tapping in the final sequence of codes. The line buzzed once, twice, and then went dead silent. For a moment, there was nothing but the low hum of the ship's failing systems. Then a voice crackled through the speaker, gruff and amused. Well, well, if it isn't Reaper himself. Thought you were dead. Close enough, Reaper replied dryly, keeping his voice calm despite the surge of adrenaline coursing through him. We've got a situation, and I need your help. The voice on the other end chuckled. Always with the problems. What is it this time? Mercenaries, alien tech, off-world contractors looking to take out Earth's fringe operations. Fringe? You're talking about Earth. The whole damn thing's fringe now. But go on. They're making their move. I need backup, something a little more aggressive. Another pause. Aggressive? You got it. But don't expect us to play nice. We don't do that anymore. I wouldn't expect anything less. I'll send the coordinates. It'll be a minute. But when we show up, it won't be pretty. I'll be ready, Reaper said, ending the call. He stood, turning back to face the others. They're coming. Who? Jenkins asked, still confused. The Reaper network, Reaper said simply. The ghosts. The ones who don't follow the rules. The ones who make sure Earth's interests aren't forgotten. Tex leaned forward. And they're coming for the mercenaries? No, they're coming for us, Reaper answered, voice low and steady. We're the ones they're going to fight for. Jenkins let out a sharp whistle. Damn, this is about to get messy, huh? Tex smiled wryly. You've got no idea. The minutes dragged on, each second filled with the anticipation of battle, the weight of the plan settling on their shoulders. For a moment, the room was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. The calm before the storm, where everything seemed to pause, holding its breath. Reaper took a seat at the table, adjusting the map of the area. He outlined the strategy, small strikes against the mercenaries' weak points, crippling their supply lines and hitting them fast and hard. But it wouldn't be easy. It wasn't supposed to be. If it were easy, it wouldn't be worth fighting. Jenkins finally spoke. So what's the play if it goes sideways? Because you know it will. If it goes sideways, Reaper said, tapping the table, we do what we always do. Adapt, innovate, and make sure we're still standing when the dust settles. Tex chuckled under her breath. And if we don't? Then Earth is going to have to deal with a problem they didn't ask for. Reaper looked at her, his expression grim. And when that happens, they'll learn the same thing we already know. What's that? Tex asked, raising an eyebrow. That when you push a human too far, you don't get a fight. You get a war. Jenkins took a long swig of beer. Well, at least this time we've got the advantage of surprise. Reaper didn't smile. He didn't need to. They all knew that no matter how much they prepared, no matter how well they planned, the coming fight would be a gamble, and the stakes were higher than they had ever been. If they failed, the galaxy would know exactly how dangerous humans could be. If they succeeded, it would be a message, one the mercenaries, the Vraxans, and anyone else watching would remember for a long time. Reaper stood, his voice steely. Get ready! This is just the beginning. The hum of the ship's engines echoed as they prepared for the final push. The countdown had begun, and as the fleet of mercenaries closed in, Earth's forgotten warriors would rise. The world wouldn't know what hit it, but it would feel it. And somewhere out there, beyond the stars, someone would listen. Because no matter how hard they pushed, humanity wasn't done yet. It wasn't over, not by a long shot.